Here's a number that should make you angry. 2 farmhouses, same square footage, same neighborhood, same year. And one of them cost $120,000 more to build than the other. Same farmhouse look, same shiplap, same black windows, same wraparound porch energy. But one owner paid for a shape, a roofline, and a floor plan that quietly bled money at every single stage of construction. And nobody warned them. I spent the last few weeks pulling 2026 construction cost data, builder cost breakdowns, and framing studies to find out exactly which farmhouse design choices are draining people's budgets, and which ones are the smart, why didn't anyone tell me this, moves that keep the same charm for a fraction of the cost. Quick ask before we dive in, hit subscribe right now. I break down real build numbers like this every week, and you don't want to miss the ones that could save you 6 figures. Okay, design number 1 is the mistake almost every dream home Pinterest board makes. And design number 9, that's the one builders almost never bring up first, because it's the one that costs them money to recommend. Stick around for that one. Let's set the scene. It's 2026. Farmhouse style isn't going anywhere. It's still one of the most requested home styles in the country, and it makes sense why. It's warm, it feels real, it photographs beautifully, and it works whether you're out in the country or squeezed onto a narrow lot in the suburbs. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Farmhouse style and farmhouse cost are 2 completely different conversations, and most people only get told about the first one. Right now, building a custom home in the US typically runs somewhere between $150 and $300 per square foot, and in a lot of markets, a modern farmhouse actually lands on the higher end of that, sometimes $200 to $300 a square foot, because of the metal roofing, the board and batten siding, the oversized windows, and the porches that get added on almost by default. None of that is a scam. Those things do cost more. But what almost nobody explains clearly is that the style isn't actually what's driving most of the extra cost. The shape is, the floor plan is, the roofline is, and those are choices. Choices a builder could walk you through in the first 5 minutes of a design meeting, but often doesn't, because the version that costs you less also tends to be simpler to sell, simpler to build, and frankly, less profitable per square foot for them. So let's go through 9 specific farmhouse design choices that keep the aesthetic everyone loves, while quietly cutting thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, off the final number. Design/1, the 4-corner farmhouse, simple rectangular footprint. Picture the classic farmhouse silhouette in your head right now. A clean rectangle, a porch across the front, a peaked roof. That simple shape isn't just an aesthetic choice from 100 years ago, it's one of the cheapest shapes you can possibly build. Here's why. Every time a floor plan adds a jog, a bump out, an angled wall, or an extra corner, it adds cost at literally every stage of the build. The foundation, the framing, the siding, the trim, the roofing. One cost analysis of framing expenses found that going beyond the basic 4 corners on a house can bump up framing costs by 10 to 15%, and that's before you even get to the roof, which gets dramatically more complicated too. Think about it like cutting fabric. A rectangle uses long, straight, efficient cuts with almost no waste. A shape with 6, 8, or 10 corners means dozens of small custom cuts, more labor hours, more waste hauled to the dumpster, and more chances for something to be built wrong and redone. The design trick here is simple. You don't lose the farmhouse look by squaring up the footprint. You gain it. Some of the most iconic, photograph-perfect farmhouses in home design catalogs are dead simple rectangles with a porch bolted onto the front. The custom, complicated version with 5 bump outs isn't more farmhouse, it's just more expensive. Why builders don't lead with this? A complex custom shape reads as more custom, and more custom usually means a bigger contract number. Nobody gets excited pitching, "We made your house a rectangle," but your bank account will be. Design/2, the simple gable roof, not the multi-gable showstopper. This one might be the single biggest hidden cost in modern farmhouse design, and it's almost entirely about the roof. A simple single gable roof, 1 clean ridge line, 2 even slopes, no interruptions, is one of the most affordable roof shapes you can build. The moment you start adding multiple gables, dormers, intersecting roof lines, or varying pitches to get that layered, custom farmhouse look, you are adding real money. Roofing professionals will tell you plainly, a roof with several valleys, dormers, and intersecting planes costs dramatically more than a simple, unified roofline, both in materials and in labor hours. Because every valley and every dormer is another place water can get in if it's not framed and flashed perfectly. And that's not just an upfront cost problem, it's a long-term one. Every dormer is essentially a hole cut into your roof. More holes mean more seams, more flashing, more places for leaks to start, and more maintenance headaches 10 and 20 years down the road. The good news, farmhouse style was basically built for simple roof lines. A clean, classic gable roof gives you that unmistakable silhouette without a single unnecessary valley or dormer. Keep the pitch steep enough to read as historic, but keep the roof planes flat and uninterrupted to keep framing labor down. Quick note on the gambrel, that two-slope barn roof shape you'll see on actual old farm structures. It's beautiful and genuinely authentic to the style, but it's not actually a cost saver. The pitch break requires more complex framing and flashing than a straight gable. Save it for when you specifically want that barn look, not when cutting cost is the main goal. Why builders don't lead with this? The busy, dramatic roofline with dormers photographs incredibly well for a portfolio and marketing shots. It looks impressive. It just doesn't tell you what it costs to build and maintain. Design #3, building up instead of out. The HA, 1.5 or 2-story farmhouse. If you've been picturing a single sprawling 1-story farmhouse with a huge footprint, here's the number that might change your mind. Shifting square footage into a second story, instead of spreading it across one level, can save roughly 10 to 20% per square foot, compared to a single-story home with the same total square footage. The math is straightforward. A 2-story home shares one foundation and one roof across 2 levels of living space. A 1-story home with the same square footage needs a much bigger foundation and a much bigger roof to cover all that space horizontally. And foundation work and roofing are 2 of the most expensive line items in any build. This is genuinely one of the most overlooked wins in farmhouse design, because a lot of people associate farmhouse with wide, low, sprawling homes. But some of the most classic and most cost-efficient farmhouse silhouettes are actually 1.5 or 2 stories. Think steep-roofed, story-and-a-half designs with dormer windows tucked into the upper level. You get more usable space, a smaller footprint, lower site work costs, and you still get every bit of that farmhouse curb appeal. Why builders don't lead with this? A bigger footprint on a bigger lot often looks more impressive to a client walking the site, and a sprawling 1-story home can genuinely be easier to build in terms of no stairs, single-level living. It's a legitimate lifestyle preference. It's just rarely presented alongside its real cost difference. Designs #4, the attached garage farmhouse. Here's one that surprises a lot of people. A detached garage, the kind with its own little farmhouse-style roofline, sitting apart from the main house, looks charming. It also tends to cost tens of thousands of dollars more than a garage built into the main footprint of the home. Why? A detached structure needs its own excavation, its own foundation, and its own complete roof system, completely separate from the main house. You're essentially building a second small building from scratch, with all the same fixed costs, permits, footings, framing, roofing, that a much larger structure would have, just spread over a smaller space. That makes the cost per square foot of a detached garage disproportionately high. If keeping costs down matters more to you than the detached garage look, consolidating the garage into the main footprint of the farmhouse is one of the more painless ways to save real money, and with the right design, an attached garage can still be dressed up with matching siding, trim, and roof lines so it blends into the farmhouse aesthetic instead of looking bolted on. Why builders don't lead with this? Detached garages and barn-style outbuildings are a popular upsell, and for good reason. They look stunning in photos. But stunning and cost-efficient are 2 different conversations, and only one of them usually gets brought up first. Design /CAG5, standard size everything, windows, cabinets, trim. This is the quiet one. It doesn't show up in glamour shots, but it shows up in your final invoice constantly. Every custom-sized window, every non-standard cabinet dimension, every specialty trim profile requires special ordering, special cutting, and often, special labor to install correctly. And all three of those things cost more than a standard off-the-shelf size. One of the most consistent pieces of advice from custom home builders is to stick with standard cabinet sizes, standard door dimensions, and standard window packages, and to choose finishes from a builder's preferred vendor list to take advantage of volume pricing. The farmhouse look is actually perfect for this strategy. A lot of that classic farmhouse charm, grid pattern windows, simple shaker cabinets, straightforward board and batten trim, is built entirely from standard, readily available components. You're not sacrificing the aesthetic by choosing standard sizes. In a lot of cases, the standard option is the authentic farmhouse look, because real historic farmhouses were built with whatever standard lumber and materials were available at the time, not custom one-off pieces. Why builders don't lead with this? Custom sizing and specialty materials often carry a better markup, and it's a much easier upsell in the moment. Let's make this window exactly the size you want. Sounds appealing before you know the price tag attached to it. Design/tag 6, slab on grade, or simple foundations over complex basements. Foundations are one of those line items people don't think about until the estimate comes back higher than expected. A full basement foundation is significantly more expensive than a slab-on-grade foundation, and a foundation with lots of corners, angles, and step-downs costs considerably more than a straightforward rectangular slab or a simple basement footprint, because that complex formwork requires far more time and labor to build correctly. If your climate and lot allow for it, choosing a simple slab-on-grade foundation paired with that four-corner rectangular footprint we talked about earlier compounds your savings. You're not just saving on the foundation itself, you're making every subsequent stage of the build, from framing to plumbing rough-in, faster and less complicated too. This doesn't mean basements are a bad choice. Plenty of regions and climates genuinely call for one, and a finished basement can be a smart way to add livable square footage without expanding your footprint. The point is simply that foundation complexity is a real cost lever, and it's rarely explained clearly at the point where you could actually still change it. Why builders don't lead with this? Foundation type is usually decided early and quietly, often before a client has really absorbed how much it affects the total number, and by the time most people ask questions about cost, the foundation decision has already been made. Design 7, the porch-forward farmhouse, instead of bump-outs and bay windows. Here's a genuinely clever trick that gets very little attention. Instead of adding curb appeal through extra corners, bay windows, or little bump-outs for a breakfast nook, add it through porches instead. Small bump-outs and window seats look charming, but they add a lot of construction cost. New corners, new foundation points, new roofline complications, for very little actual usable square footage in return. A deep, wraparound, or generously covered front porch, on the other hand, delivers dramatic curb appeal and genuinely usable outdoor living space, and it's comparatively inexpensive to build next to a bump-out because it doesn't require the same foundation and roofline complexity that jogs and angles do. This one is almost tailor-made for farmhouse style, because wraparound porches are already one of the defining, most requested features of the look going into 2026. Homeowners are increasingly treating a deep porch as an outdoor bonus room, with distinct zones for morning coffee, dinner, and evening lounging, all wrapped around a single simple footprint underneath. Why builders don't lead with this? Bump-outs and bay windows are often framed as small, easy yes upgrades during a design meeting. It's just one little addition, without walking through how much foundation, framing, and roofline complexity that one little addition actually triggers. Design/tag 8. Durable, low-maintenance materials over high-maintenance, authentic ones. This is where farmhouse design actually has a real advantage, if you choose the right materials. A standing seam metal roof, for example, can last somewhere between 40 and 70 years, compared to roughly 15 to 25 years for standard asphalt shingles, and it holds up better against hail and reflects heat more effectively too. Fiber cement siding resists rot and pests far better than traditional wood siding, while still giving you that classic board and batten farmhouse look. The upfront cost of these materials is sometimes slightly higher than the cheapest option on the shelf, but they dramatically cut your long-term maintenance and replacement costs. No repainting every few years, no re-roofing every 15 years, no rot repairs. Builders sometimes steer conversations toward the cheapest visible finish rather than the cheapest total cost of ownership option, simply because the sticker price comparison is what most clients are focused on in the moment. The smart farmhouse move is to spend where it protects your investment long-term, roofing and siding, and save through the design and shape choices we've already covered, rather than spending everywhere evenly, or worse, cutting corners on durability just to hit a number. Why builders don't lead with this? The cheaper, shorter lifespan material keeps the initial quote looking more competitive, and the true cost comparison only becomes obvious 10 or 20 years later, long after the contract is signed. Design hack tag 9. Considering a modular or panelized farmhouse. Save this one for last, because it's the one that gets brought up least, and it's the one with arguably the biggest single swing in total cost. In real 2026 cost comparisons out of Texas markets, a 3-bedroom, 2,000 square foot custom modern farmhouse, fully stick-built, framed entirely on-site, can run anywhere from $400,000 to over $600,000 once you factor in current material and skilled labor costs, land excluded. A modular or panelized version of a comparable farmhouse floor plan, where wall panels and major components are built in a factory and assembled on site, can bring that structural package cost down by roughly 20 to 30%. On a home in that price range, that's a real, documented gap of tens of thousands of dollars for a similar footprint and finish level. Modular and panelized construction isn't right for every lot, every region, or every level of customization someone wants. Fully custom, one-of-a-kind architectural details are genuinely harder to achieve with a factory panel system, and it works best with simpler, more standardized plans. But if your goal really is cutting cost while keeping the farmhouse look, at least getting a quote on a modular or panelized option is worth doing before you commit fully to a stick-built custom build. Why builders don't lead with this? Most traditional builders and general contractors make their money on stick-built, on-site construction. Recommending a modular alternative that could be built by a different company entirely isn't exactly in their financial interest to bring up first, even when it might genuinely be in yours. The pattern behind all 9. Notice what actually ties these 9 things together. It's almost never the farmhouse style itself that's expensive. Metal roofs, board and batten siding, big black windows. Sure, those add some cost, and that part is genuinely explained pretty openly by most builders. What quietly explodes a budget is shape, roofline complexity, footprint size, foundation type, and material lifespan. The structural decisions made early in the design process, often before a client fully understands what those decisions are actually costing them. And those decisions tend to get less airtime because the simpler, cheaper version doesn't sell as dramatically in a rendering, and it doesn't carry the same margin for the people building it. None of this means builders are acting in bad faith. A lot of this comes down to what clients ask about versus what naturally gets showcased. The complicated, photogenic version is what gets put in the portfolio, and the plainer, cheaper version rarely gets asked about by name. But now you know exactly what to ask about, which is honestly half the battle in keeping a custom farmhouse build on budget. If this saved you from making an expensive mistake before you even broke ground, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach other people who are about to make the exact same decisions you just learned to avoid. And if you want more real, numbers-backed breakdowns like this, before you sign anything with a builder, subscribe and turn on notifications, because I've got more of these coming. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these 9 surprised you the most. Was it the garage, the roofline, or the modular numbers at the end? I read every single comment, and I'll be pulling from them for the next video in this series. See you in the next one.